Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining this webinar. I am Johan Terry, responsible for SRI research at Exane BNP Paribas. I'm very pleased to introduce you Louise Ellison, who is head of sustainability at Hammerson PLC. So as you probably know, Hammerson PLC is a FTSE 100 real estate company. There will be a short presentation and then a Q&A, so please wait for the end of the presentation to ask your questions, but you can still use the box at the bottom of your screen to enter some questions during the call. So I will now hand over to Louise, who will present the sustainability strategy and targets of Hammerson PLC. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Johan, and thank you everybody for joining us today, this afternoon for this call. It's very good to be able to talk to you about some of our strategy and our targets and what we've been doing over the past 12 months. I'm going to run through for this presentation a little bit of background about Hammerson, just to make sure everybody's clear exactly what the company is doing and what our priorities are. I'll go through a little bit about our current performance against the targets that we set a few years ago, what our new 5-year targets are that we've set just now, and what our key areas of focus are, both for 2015 and going forward after that. So there's quite a lot that we're going to get through, but hopefully there'll be time for you to have some questions. And as Johan said, please do enter any questions into the box below so that we can pick those up at the end. So just to start with, a little bit about Hammerson as a business and what our business model is. Obviously, we are a retail specialist REIT. We hold shopping centres and retail parks, and we tend to have a medium to long-term hold of our assets. So we are not a developer trader. We hold the assets, and that goes a long way to informing a lot of what we do around sustainability and driving our strategy. We create, as we say, high-class and high-quality retail destinations. And we generate income through excellent asset management at those assets. So sustainability and the operation of that portfolio are highly interlinked. We also look at enhancing the capital value of our capital strength and the capital value of our portfolio by capitalising on development opportunities, both on new projects and through our existing assets where there's opportunities to add value. So that's really what we fundamentally do as a business. So the question is, how does sustainability fit into that? This slide just gives you a short, just an overview of geographically of where we're positioned. What's quite interesting about that, there are, in terms of sustainability, if we think about climate change risk, we're predominantly North European, but we're already seeing extreme weather events, both higher and lower temperatures. It's giving us higher fluctuations in our heating and cooling costs. Potentially that gives us exposure to energy price rises, security of supply issues. So immediately we see the portfolio and there are issues that we're starting to look at in terms of how we manage sustainability, the risk implications and impacts it has for us as a business. So where does sustainability support our program? Oh, sorry, I've gone too far there. Sorry, let me get the right slide back. Flick through. Where does the sustainability support the business? The 3 key areas of asset management, development, and corporate responsibility all have sort of fundamental sustainability implications. Under asset management, there's a lot of regulation that we have to deal with, and you can see from the relative alphabet soup that we have on the slides here, there's a number of different initiatives that we have to deal with, many of which are regulatory, and we know that obviously minimum energy performance standards are coming in the UK in the next few years, and we're making sure that we take the risk out of our portfolios in relation to that. We're complying obviously with CRC, with ESOS. We also have regulations across that apply to the French portfolio as well. But fundamentally, good asset management from a sustainability point of view is giving us significant cost savings. And as we run through the headlines for 2014, we'll be able to see where these cost savings are coming from. So there's fundamental cost savings on the asset management side of the business, and also there's risk management. And as I said earlier, there's some energy and environmental risks that are already emerging. So having a very sort of strong, efficient sustainability portfolio that's embedded across the business makes it much easier for us to deal with those risks as they arise. The development portfolio and the pipeline of development that we've got at the moment is very strong. Development control is a big issue here, and making sure that we have really strong relationships with the local authorities, with whoever we're dealing with in terms of development control. Making sure that our reputation is first class in this area helps us enormously in terms of making sure that we get the permissions and the license to operate that we need in those kinds of areas. Minimum standards are being put in. We are expected to be building to higher and higher standards, making sure that we have the ability to deliver that across our portfolio, and all our teams and the teams that we work with are able to deliver that. Just means that our development process is more efficient. We have very strong community consultation, reputation for community consultation, and we make sure that we build on this. And again, making sure that our assets are very strong in their communities, have good relationships with the communities within which they operate. They're remaining relevant for those communities. It keeps people coming through the doors of those assets. So it supports our asset management as well as the development that we do. Making sure that we deliver assets that are resilient, not just for now, but for what we expect and anticipate in terms of climate change and other changes, demographic changes, social changes that we see coming, technological changes, all are increasingly important to us and taken into consideration where we're planning those schemes. And obviously, there's the license to operate that we have. Our corporate responsibility agenda is very significant and very important to that. We report on our greenhouse gas emissions, of course, but we go beyond compliance with all of our reporting in all of our reporting areas. We submit to all of the standard industry surveys so that we can benchmark our performance, and our shareholders and stakeholders can benchmark our performance as well. We also contribute to other schemes such as the Real Estate Environment Benchmark, which is really developing to start to indicate where we can look at operational performance and rather than just asset management, benchmarking asset management performance. So the performance in use of our assets is beginning to be a key area for investigation. So, looking at the key headlines then for 2014, if we run through why the business does what it does, what the business does, and how sustainability supports that, what really have we managed to do? What have we managed to achieve over the last year? Well, firstly, we're very pleased to have achieved a 20% reduction in our carbon emissions across our like-for-like portfolio since 2010. We were targeting achieving that by the end of this year, so we've effectively managed to achieve that a year early, which is great news. It's been done largely through good management of that portfolio. We've taken opportunities to put in energy efficiency measures and different types of equipment, but all of which has been done within the plan, program, and maintenance of those assets, all with good payback times. So it's a tremendous success that we've managed to do that across the portfolio. The portfolio has changed quite dramatically. So this like-for-like portfolio that we're measuring this against is our retail assets, both here and in France. And those different portfolios obviously perform slightly differently, but the overall figures show that we've managed to make this fairly significant adjustment. Given that we've been assessing our carbon emissions since 2006, this does actually demonstrate that we've managed to achieve a 40% reduction in our carbon emissions since 2006 across the portfolios, which just shows really what the real estate industry can do when we put our minds to it. For the last year, a 6% year-on-year reduction in electricity consumption across the UK shopping centre portfolio made a big contribution to that overall reduction in carbon emissions. The UK shopping centre portfolio is the biggest contributor to our greenhouse gas emissions as a business overall, so making sure that we're really focusing on our management expertise in that portfolio is really significant. Those savings have brought us over £400,000 of energy financial savings through energy efficiencies. That gets split between reduction in service charge for our retail clients and efficiencies for the business, where the energy savings are across our car parks portfolio. So there are real bottom line savings and efficiencies that we can make and that we are making on a yearly basis. Other areas that are significantly important for us at the moment: recycling and waste. Waste is high on our list. We've got changing legislation in Scotland where we have zero waste to landfill, and waste obviously is increasingly expensive to manage. We targeted a 75% recycling rate for the business. Across the business in the UK, shopping centres have achieved that. There's been very hard work to make sure that we've actually got good recycling rates across those assets. We managed to achieve a 100% diversion from landfill rates across many of our UK assets as well. Performance is struggles more across the French assets. There is simply less infrastructure in place to support recycling across France than there is in the UK. There's less focus on it because there is the landfill tax in France is less than it is in the UK. Overall, those recycling rates and that diversion from landfill demonstrates a £2 million plus saving in landfill tax for our retail customers, which obviously makes a significant difference in our service charge conversations with them. Who we work with and how we manage our supply chain has a significant impact on what we can actually achieve. A lot of the operation and asset management of our assets is done via third parties. So making sure that we are working with the right people and companies who have a similar approach to us and understand what we're trying to do is important. And we do this largely through our supply chain survey. We've now had 142 companies go through the supply chain survey. We've published our second annual supplier report, and the results, I have to say, are very promising. And certainly the feedback we get, the companies who go through our supply chain survey find it incredibly useful. Mandatory greenhouse gas emissions reporting this year demonstrated a reduction of an improvement in our intensity, our greenhouse gas emissions intensity, if I can get that out properly. An improvement in our greenhouse gas emissions intensity from 221 to 180 metric tons of CO2 per million tons of adjusted profit before tax. We've adopted this as our intensity indicator for the GHG emissions across the business. It really goes to demonstrating that we can grow the business, improve our productivity, while simultaneously reducing the amount of carbon emissions. And that's really the objective that I have, is to make sure that the business is increasingly profitable without actually increasing the amount of carbon emissions that we're generating. So that was a great success for us, and we look forward to continuing in that direction. Oh, I've just gone too far again. There we go. Finishing off our 2014 achievements, we've got a substantial number of green leases in place across the portfolio. And in France, in response to Grenelle 2 and the requirements that we have there, we now have 63% of the leases on those assets, which are green leases, which is a pretty significant achievement on an extensive portfolio. One of our biggest projects in 2014 was the Big Positive Weekend Sustainability Roadshow. We see our shopping centres as a really important platform for communicating with consumers. We're business to business, we're not business to consumer, but nonetheless, we have millions of people coming through our doors in our shopping centres. They want to do interesting things, they want to find engaging and exciting things in those centres, and sustainability is very much in people's minds at the moment. So to take the opportunity to raise awareness, to alert people to what they can do in order to promote sustainability and to make more sustainable decisions in their day-to-day lives, we found that a really interesting, exciting opportunity, and indeed they did as well. We had very good response from that. So we're going to endeavour to run that show again in 2016 and extend it to our French portfolio. Two other big, very successful projects we've had this year: the delivery of the eco-store at Merthyr Tydfil for B&Q, which won the Property Week Sustainability of the Year award this year. that's a great store with some great technologies that have been put in and is running incredibly efficiently for B&Q as a client. Working with clients like B&Q and indeed Costa, who we've just opened the zero carbon retail pod for on the retail park in Telford, Wrekin, working with those kinds of clients who really are interested in making things different and really taking things forward has been very exciting, and that's really, we're looking to do as many more projects like that as we can. So this slide just gives you an overview of the CR targets that we set out in 2010 and where we are against them. They finish in 2015, and some of these have already completed, as you can see. Most of these we've made good progress on over the last 5 years. There's been a few that have been very challenging, and we've had variable success with over the last few years. One of the ones that remains challenging for us is our customer engagement. Particularly, these are our retail customers on our site, specifically around retail, specifically around sustainability. We have retail forums and we have a lot of conversations with them, but to get all of our retailers and to try to get top 75 customers engaged, I think was a very strong target to try to achieve. We put in a program in 2013 called the Positive Growth Awards, which looked at engaging with retailers at unit level at the different shopping centres, and we piloted that at Westquay, and it was very successful in getting them to engage around what was going on in terms of environmental performance of the stores. So we're looking at how we can roll that out across the portfolio as a whole, and that's going to be one of the ways in which we can increase our engagement with the retailers at store level. However, we also want to do more with our retailers at corporate level in terms of sustainability, and we've set up a retail forum, particularly looking at issues like fit out and sustainable fit out, which we're finding incredibly helpful, and people, certainly the retailers we're engaged with so far, are finding very useful. So we'll do more of that work going forward. Another area that we find challenging, continue to find challenging, is water reduction. We've been very successful with the reduction of our water consumption across the French portfolio, where we have much more extensive metering. This has been more challenging in the UK, but again, we'll continue to try to work on that across the portfolios going forward. Our success with the suppliers, with our life cycle assessments, with the research that we do, with the carbon emissions, I think we're very proud of what we've done, and our recycling rates. We're very proud of what we've done over the last few years, and we've certainly used the learning and the experience that we've had to inform the targets that we've set for the next 5 years, which we are starting to work on now. So one of the big projects we had to do last year was to update our sustainability strategy. As I said, our 5-year targets were coming to an end, so we needed to review what we'd done, how we performed, and what we wanted to do next. We had our stakeholder engagement, and our 5 stakeholder groups were really what drove our sustainability strategy for the last few years, and we found this very successful. So we have built on that approach, but we have identified that we really want to go further, and certainly the work we did with our stakeholders and doing the peer review work that we did over the last summer had indicated that our stakeholders also want us to see what we can do and to go further in being more ambitious in terms of what we want to do next. There were clear priorities that came back from our stakeholders: energy security of supply and reducing the energy demand from our assets. Technology came back as being a significant issue. Community engagement, the investment and relevance of our investment in our communities and making sure they remain relevant for the communities which they serve was seen as very important. Waste clearly remains on the agenda, and again, meeting our customer sustainability objectives. So we work with a lot of retailers who obviously have very strong CR objectives themselves, so making sure, as I said before, that we find ways of actually engaging with them to do that is going to be significant. So we came up with a series of themes for and commitments for our new sustainability strategy that build, as I say, on the 5 stakeholder groups that we had before. Innovate and challenge, protect and enhance, serve and invest, partner and collaborate, and upskill and inspire really encapsulate what we want to do, and you can see from the slide what we mean under each of those commitments. We've established a series of targets. There's an extensive series of targets that we have developed to go with these commitments. These are, here we go, ranged under each of those commitments, and we are publishing making public those targets here. So to start with, reducing under protect and enhance, reducing our carbon emissions intensity of the business by 20%. I talked a little bit about our intensity indicators before. For our shopping centres, our intensity obviously is a metre squared of our common parts area. So we'll be managing down our intensity in terms of common parts area. For our retail parks, it's our car parking spaces, and for the business as a whole, adjusted profits before tax. So that's again quite a substantial target for us to achieve a further 20% on what we've already done. Reducing our operational energy use by 10% by 2018. As I said, our stakeholders see that operational energy use and energy demand is a very significant issue for us. So going further to continue to reduce that operational energy demand is going to be a key issue for us. And that's on the like-for-like shopping centre and retail parks portfolio. Building 2 megawatts of renewable capacity into our existing assets. The renewables is a big area of investment. It's become more and more viable, so making sure that we're taking opportunities to put the renewable capacity. It's easiest to do that on new developments, but also looking at our existing assets, particularly the retail parks, to see what we can see what we can achieve in terms of new capacity there. Then going on under protect and enhance, our other environmental targets, achieving. Focusing on waste. As I said, waste is very much in our sights, and particularly because of the increase in the development pipeline, we have focused our attention there and are looking for very strong targets to reach 100% diversion of operational and construction waste, 100% diversion from landfill by 2020 across the portfolio in the UK, and extending that further for the French portfolio out to 2025. As I said, it is definitely more challenging there. Reducing our landlord water intensity, as I said, it's challenging. It's a challenging area for us, water consumption. But as we increasingly meter, and as we start looking at ways of implementing rainwater harvesting and other systems of water recycling across the portfolio, then we look to getting that down. Meeting 100% of irrigation demands and 25% of flushing demands from non-potable water. Trying to move away from using potable water for things that it isn't required for, where we're using irrigation and flushing, those kinds of things, is going to be a key issue for us in the new developments and major extensions. Under our other targets, our other commitment areas, under Serve and Invest, the importance of investing in our local communities and making sure that we remain really connected with them came back loud and clear from our stakeholder engagement work. So making sure that those community design workshops are held, that we're really engaging and understanding what those communities want, what they expect, and how we can really deliver assets that are going to work well for them, and work well for them over a period of time, because our assets are going to be in those communities for a long period of time. So we need to make sure they are resilient and that they remain effective for those communities for generations to come. Extending our placemaking impact assessment, we did significant work in 2013 when we did our social return on investment research. We want to extend that this year and start looking at really creating a baseline so we can see what is excellence in terms of placemaking, how do we perform against it, and how do we make sure that we continue to improve. Delivering centre-based retailer engagement work. So as I said, retailer engagement activity, I mentioned the positive growth awards that we're going to be rolling out across the rest of the portfolio. Updating our supply chain survey. It's been very effective, the supply chain survey, and it's really demonstrated how a real approach of partnership with our different stakeholders can bring about some really great results. And of course, our workforce is essential. Sustainability is pretty well embedded across Hammerson as a business, but obviously things change, things move on, and making sure that everybody in the business on a rolling program receives continuous sustainability training is very important to us. So what are our priorities going to be for 2015? On the operational side, managing our energy consumption remains a priority. The electricity consumption across our UK portfolio is our biggest impact. So making sure that we continue to find opportunities to manage that down is a big priority for us. We have lighting projects in place at the Bullring in Birmingham, and we are looking at other centres as well. We've got 3 projects that are being implemented over the course of the remainder of this year to significantly manage down the lighting consumption of those assets. We're looking at our waste management across our portfolios. Zero waste to landfill has come in Scotland, so we're achieving that there, but making sure that we are managing this in as effective a way as possible so that we can reduce our waste management costs is a big issue, and also making sure that we are learning from our experience in Scotland and spreading that information, spreading that knowledge across our other assets and sharing it across our teams. Embedding innovation and development, I talked a little bit about putting in our renewables program across the assets and making sure that our staff are properly trained. And we have a new sustainable development framework which has been established particularly to make it easy for our development teams to begin to look at what opportunities they have to embed sustainability across any new scheme that comes forward. It differs from scheme to scheme. They are all different. They all have their own opportunities. They all have their own challenges. But by providing our development teams and our project management teams with a very clear sustainable development framework and briefing program, it makes it much, much easier for them to be able to identify the opportunities that they can take, and we can begin to embed those at a very early stage in development. And that's clearly critical, making sure that anything we do is embedded very early in those developments and makes it much easier to roll out. Supplier engagement, we'll be reviewing the supply chain survey. It's been very effective over the last 2 or 3 years, but it needs updating, partly because a lot of our suppliers are really upping their game and doing some really interesting things, and we want to be able to make sure that we're gathering that information through the supply chain survey, and also to make sure that we are bespoking that supply chain survey for the different types of sector that we work with. So there's going to be a review of that survey, and it'll be rolled out again, and our suppliers will be invited to participate. And obviously we'll be implementing this updated strategy and these new 5-year targets. So over the next 5 years, there's going to be a huge amount of work for the business to do, but we're very excited about it. There's lots of opportunities that we have to really up our game and to take sustainability to the next level. So that's the end of my slides, and there's an opportunity for questions.
Yes. Thank you, Louise, for this presentation. So we'll now start the Q&A session. And if you don't mind, I would like to jump in. You talked about lighting. I wanted to know if there are other types of energy efficiency projects that Hammerson plans for the next few years.
We do. We've got 3 projects that are on the go at the moment. We have been very effective, and we've made some good energy reductions by implementing energy efficient lighting, particularly T5 lighting, over the last 5 or 6 years across the portfolio. Many of those projects have now paid back, and we have got to a stage where we are now looking at implementing LED lighting as standard across many of our schemes. We have a big project in place to put LED lighting across front of house, back of house, and car parks, starting with the Bullring in Birmingham, which is an extensive project, and that's one of the biggest consumers of electricity in the portfolio. We see that as a big opportunity to make some substantial reductions. It's been quite a while in the creation of that project, partly because the technology has been developing, and you need to find the right moments at which to implement the technology. You don't want to go too early with it. And also because as that technology developed quite quickly, the opportunity arose for us to begin looking at putting it front of house as well as back of house and in the car park. So the LED lighting has become much, much more sophisticated. So waiting a while has been incredibly beneficial for that project, and has allowed us to look at rolling it out much further. So we're expecting to start on site with that in the next few weeks. We're also looking at similar schemes at Brent Cross and at Central in South London, because again, we can make significant savings. The paybacks are very quick, particularly on back of house and car parking. What is important is obviously that we can manage those projects so that they fall in line with other programs of management and works that are going on in the schemes. The assets are live assets. Often people think that it must be very straightforward to just roll out new lighting across an asset. But of course, they're actively managed assets. They will have programs of works that are going on, and we have to pick the right moment to get those things implemented. But those 3 schemes are going ahead, and we'll obviously look at rolling it out elsewhere. We're also looking at how we can roll out LED lighting across the retail car parks, because there's clear opportunities. We've put in energy efficient lighting in the past there and dusk till dawn controls, but there's lots of opportunity to actually put LED on those car parks as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. If you would like to ask a question over the phone, please press star or asterisk key followed by the digit 1 on your telephone. Please ensure that the mute function is not switched off to allow your signal to reach our equipment. Again, please press star 1 to ask a question. And we will take our first question from Oliver Creasy in Green Street Advisors. Please go ahead.
Hi there. Yeah, this is Ollie Creasy at Green Street. Just a quick question for you guys. Presumably you have some sort of return hurdles on the projects that you embark on. Are there any numbers that you can provide us that relate to that information? And assuming that you do sort of restrict yourself to projects that meet these requirements, can you give any sort of information on what budget you have for that, or what sort of size the investments are that you are making? Just to sort of give it a bit of context, if you're thinking of any impacts that this sort of thing might have on a share price or an NAV, is it likely that they're going to be sufficiently large that it's something that is going to move those needles, or are we still talking sort of relatively small scale projects on that scale?
Starting with hurdle rates, and hi Ollie. Starting with hurdle rates, where we do particularly lighting projects, there always has to be a business case for doing them. And the projects that we do typically we're looking at they pay back in kind of sub 6 years. Where we are looking at back of house lighting and car park lighting, it'll be kind of 18 months. But some of the front of house lighting takes longer. But because obviously, we hold the assets for a fairly significant amount of time, so that makes sense for us. But we have to be very strict in terms of the hurdle rates and the payback periods, because many of these projects are forward funded through service charge, because ultimately these are projects that are the beneficiaries at the end of the day are the tenants, because they're reducing their service charge costs, which is why we have to make sure that they are relatively quick payback periods. So that gives you an indication roughly of what we're looking at. With regards to the quantum of them, so something like the Bullring project is we're spending just over £1 million on the lighting there, and as I say, that's going to pay back in a relatively short period of time. So we're looking at sub 6 year, around 5 year payback on that project. What we're not doing at the moment is scaling up those types of investment in, for example, renewables or lighting, so that you might kind of have a specific kind of investment pool that might kind of invest a few million in something like a big renewables scheme, something like that. What we could do and what we will look at doing is where we've got opportunities for putting particularly solar PV extensively on some of our roofs, then we could look at scaling those types of projects. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. I mean, as you can imagine, I'm just sort of I'm a sell-side analyst. If you weren't aware, and obviously our clients are more focused on the numbers and the value of these projects. Much though I think that it's an admirable thing to be doing. You need to be able to justify it financially.
And of course anything that we do that is reducing the costs of operating in our assets fundamentally goes to the business case of what we do. So if the service charge conversations that our property teams have with our retail clients are very, significant ones. So anything we do that makes sure that the service charge on our assets is cheaper than the service charge on anybody else's assets is incredibly helpful for those conversations. It just makes us more attractive. It makes our assets more attractive for people to be occupying, for those companies to be occupying.
Sure.
So anything that does that obviously is enormously helpful for business.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. As a reminder, to ask a question over the phone, please press star 1.
There was a question that came in from Matthias about publishing over the web platform, about publishing interim yearly targets for our greenhouse gas emissions. We set yearly targets for the centres, and yes, we can publish interim annual targets for those centres. They wouldn't necessarily get published at the same time as as other targets do for the business, but yeah, we can certainly look at publishing our interim annual targets for them. We want to, we're perfectly transparent about what we do. There's no reason why we wouldn't be able to publish those targets, but they would be obviously on a consolidated basis for the business as a whole, as opposed to asset by asset. So has anybody else got any questions that they want to put forward?
There are no questions on the phone at this time.
Maybe I would ask another question. It's Johan from Exane. I was just curious, do you think customers at shopping centers are getting more sensitive to sustainability issues, and do you think you could be more proactive in communication at shopping centers and potentially, attract more customers because you are doing certain sustainability projects?
I think it's an interesting one. Certainly the experience we had from the Sustainability Roadshow last year was we ran a survey as part of that project, asking people what really what was driving their purchasing decisions. And in terms of sustainability issues, obviously price comes up first, but we asked them around ethical issues, environmental issues, advertising, marketing, brand, all sorts of different things. And in terms of environmental, social governance or sustainability, ethics came up very strongly. So after price, it was ethics. They were very interested in the ethics of what they were purchasing. So that would suggest that there's an increasing sensitivity amongst the shopping public, the consumer public, around some areas of sustainability. So the more that we can inform them, the more that we can raise that awareness, the more we can respond to that. I think that's useful and that's interesting. From our point of view, because we're business to business, not business to consumer, we have to work out how that really works for us. And the way it works, I think, is because as we increase that communication, as we use our shopping centres as platforms to communicate in that way, it just increases people's levels of interest, and you're providing something that's really not necessarily bringing more people through the door, but increasing those dwell times, making our centres have that reputation for this is somewhere that we can go and we can learn about something. It's not about selling things to people, it's about informing them, and it's about giving them the power to then go and make their own decisions in a slightly different way. So the feedback we got from that was incredibly strong this summer. And when we did that roadshow, we partnered with a number of different companies. So Nationwide was a partner on that project. H&M were a partner on that project. Aeon were a partner. So there were partners who were at Renault who were also very interested in terms of sustainability and have a big message and have a message to get across. So they found that very, very useful, and they were very big supporters of that idea of getting information out without necessarily selling things to people, but making sure that people are aware of the different types of product that are available. It's about raising awareness and getting that message to people. And I think using the centres as a platform to do that is important. And then also one of the things that we do need to do, I think, is be a little bit more, as you asked about communicating what we do. as I say, we're business to business, but I think people do like to know what's going on at their shopping centre. They do very much see it as their local shopping centre. So we are going to be putting a programme of communication into the centres so that people can see exactly, what is the energy consumption, what are we doing, what projects are on hand at those centres in order to really make them demonstrate the case of being more environmentally responsible and more sustainable. So Matthias has asked a question about what kind of retailer engagement activities that we have planned. Well, one of the, as I mentioned, we've started Positive Growth Awards, and one of the things that we plan to do is extend that. And as I said, that is a program that goes on at unit level. It's actually within the centres. And each of the shops within the centre is invited to participate. Our retail liaison staff within the centres they go into the stores, they work with the staff within the stores in order to get them to work out exactly how their store is performing in terms of its environmental performance, but also environmental risks. For our centres, being aware of those environmental risks is very key. So looking at environmental performance at a store level, and that again, it worked really well when we did that at West Quay, and we then, as part of those awards, we can assess them, and the different stores get awarded effectively a gold, silver, bronze type branding to go with it. So we're looking to extend that across the portfolio, but also link it with another set of awards that we have around customer satisfaction. Our Love Retail Awards, which are around customer service. So combining the two, I think, brings will create kind of a little bit more momentum for that whole project. So that's one of the things that we're doing this year. It has its challenges because, of course, the people who are running those shops are on the ground in those stores. They're not necessarily particularly in touch, particularly with the environmental performance of the store. They won't necessarily see their energy bills. And one of the things that we found when we ran the project was it was very interesting once we got people to start asking their head office to get more information about what was actually the consumption levels of their own store. People found that very interesting and very engaging, and were beginning to actually be much more motivated to manage their own energy demands better. So that was a big highlight of it. So we're going to be extending that, and then, as I said, I mentioned that we have a retailer forum that we've established. One of the biggest areas that we have the biggest challenges that we have, not just Hammerson but as an industry on the retail side, is fit out. We have no control particularly over retail fit out. The retailers obviously control their own fit out. We have standards that the retailers have to meet, and we have a retail delivery process. And many retailers, particularly our bigger clients, have very sustainable fit-outs of their own anyway. But trying to make sure that, as a standard, there is a higher environmental standards in fit-outs across our portfolio is quite challenging, particularly given the variety of retail customers that we have. So that retail forum is really working to try to share a lot of that experience and put together a really practical, useful guide that will be then available to anybody who is coming into any of our assets, to try to encourage them to make sure that their stores are as sustainable as they can be, so that they can. And we will be using case studies and different examples so that they can see the types of efficiencies that you can get from actually through a different type of fit out and through managing that process well. So those are two big areas that we're working on. We also, as standard, we have retailer engagement that goes on across the centres, and we have regular meetings with the retailers where any environmental concerns are raised. We have made this as a standard agenda item on the tenant meetings that are regularly held at each of our centres. So I hope that answers your question, Matthias. Okay. If there's nothing, if nobody's got any other questions coming through that they want to post, Johan, shall I hand back to you?
Okay, well, thank you everybody for connecting to the webinar. If you have further questions, don't hesitate to contact Louise. I think the details are on the website. Or myself also, you can definitely join us if you want us to put you in contact. Thank you very much and have a good day.
Thank you, everybody.